Pop, 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 pop. Hello and welcome back to a Squirrel Plays. Today we'll be talking about not the video I teased for the past couple episodes. I know. I'm sorry, trust me. I feel bad enough. I was looking forward to doing that video, but when I finally got down to working on the script for it, I realized it just wasn't going to be what I hoped for. The good news is, though, we ended up getting to do it on stream, and we had a really fun time over there. And as of recording this, we still have a couple other things to do in that, so maybe we'll even get a second stream, who knows. But if that wasn't enough to keep me busy, I also have to learn how to use this. I have to learn how to use it and try it out so I can give my 2 cents for a video on it because it has a Kickstarter coming up in a few weeks. And I'm telling you, I'm going to have to get myself a manager or something because I can't seem to keep up. That, or YouTube needs to start paying me. Anyway, it's not a total loss because today we're going to be talking about hard and soft magic systems and what they can bring to the table. Whether that's writing a story or the literal table of a TTRPG is entirely up to you. And honestly, I did want to have this chat a while back, but the end of Planar Crossroads already had some discussions about it scheduled around that time, so I thought I'd be a gentle squirrel and wait a bit. If you'd like to check those episodes out, you can hop on over to his channel and give them a watch and a listen. Yours truly got to be a part of the conversation, so make sure you tell them who sent you. But that was then, and now is now, which means you get the squirrel and nothing but the squirrel. And what does that mean? Infinitely less organization, that's what. But I do have at least a hint of an outline here, so let's start this thing by defining what hard and soft magic systems are, so we're all on the same page. Then we'll dive off into the differences and see how we can use them in our worlds. Let's start with hard magic systems. What is hard magic? A hard magic is where your rules and limitations are clear and understandable. They're consistent. They make sense. You typically don't get thrown for a curveball because some new rule came out of nowhere and changed the whole thing up. Typically. Granted, that still can happen, but if it's done well, it's within the confines of the rules that already technically existed. With this system, the audience will know and understand what the rules are. Full Metal Alchemist would be a pretty solid example of what that is with its law of equivalent exchange. You cannot create something out of nothing. If you want to make something, then something of equal value must be given in exchange. And really, that's a good show. I don't particularly consider myself an anime fan, but man, it had some good writing. It also gave us this gem.
Are you all right, Colonel?
Yeah, I'm fine. Except, it's a terrible day for rain.
What do you mean? It's not raining.
Yes, it is.
Oh, so it is. Why don't we head back? It's getting chilly out here.
Oh, that's the good stuff. Hurts real good. Ow. Anyway, my point is, everybody in that world understands that rule, as does the audience. The story works around those rules and uses it to, well, tell a story. It doesn't just make things up as it goes. And if that's how hard magic works, then how does soft magic work? If you didn't know already, then you've probably already guessed. It doesn't have clear rules and limitations, at least from the audience's point of view. And on that note, I will add my own squirrely 2 cents here. You, the writer, should know how your magic system works, at least to a certain degree that's past what the audience has. But I will hang on to that thought for later. We'll get back to it. An example of soft magic I'd wager most people are familiar with is the Force from Star Wars. Now, granted, a lot of its softness is due to just bad writing, but its initial concept was a soft magic system. In the early movies, we're told it's a mysterious energy that flows throughout the entire universe. Some seek to understand it, some seek to wield and control it, and others want to dominate it. We see it do strange things like guide torpedoes down the shaft of the Death Star, lift ships out of the swamp, and search feelings or something, maybe? And in later movies, we get to see it do things like super speed, healing, and I guess maybe this.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
If bad writing was a crime, that would be a life sentence. But anyway, there's your definition. Hard magic has rules and limitations that hopefully the audience understands. Soft magic is a bit more unknown and leaves the audience unsure of its limitations. I would also add the system doesn't particularly have to fall 100% into one or the other. Think of it more as a scale that you lean one way or the other on. I see a lot of people say that Avatar was a hard magic system, but from what I remember, granted it was a long time ago when I watched it, is that it felt like it was more in the center of that scale. You had the hard rules such as firebenders controlling fire, waterbenders controlling water, and all that, but the level of how much they could control certainly seemed less defined. And that's not a bad thing either. Great show, and not just because Uncle Iroh was in it.
This tea is nothing more than hot leaf juice.
And you know what else is great? That like and subscribe button. Oh, golly, I hate doing that. Anyway, magic. Now that we know the difference between the two, you might be thinking, which one is better? And if you've been around here before, you probably already know that I'm going to say neither. They both have their strengths and weaknesses. Sometimes one performs better than the other because of the setting, and one might benefit your writing style better than the other. It's also a strong matter of opinion. Some people like the hard magic, and some just like soft magic. The question is, then, which one do you need for your current story? And to figure that out, let's do the squirrel thing and just blast some ideas on the board here. I'll start off by saying I don't have an overall preference, but I do have a preference specific to a platform. And by that, I mean I like hard magic in my books and movies. I like to know the limitations and the rules. That way the story is more about the characters and how they That way the story is more about the characters and how they figure things out and how they use those rules of the world to overcome the obstacles, instead of suddenly finding the power of friendship to beat the bad guy. But when it comes to video games and TTRPGs, I am a fan of the soft magic approach. I'm the one out and exploring the world and testing the limits of things and discovering it all for myself. And I'd like to show you this cool little graph I found a while back that really brings it all together. It actually came from a decent article, which I will link down below in the description. Let's look at these two here. You can see soft magic gives us more sense of wonder, which is exactly what I want when playing a game. And as a GM, I of course appreciate the flexibility, but that's something that can very easily be abused in your storytelling. It's great for a GM because it gives them room to make some quick, on-the-spot decisions with less risk of breaking things, as well as just less prep time in general for their world, but it can cause some bad habits in your writing. Star Wars is a terrific example. It's gotten to the point that the Force just kind of does whatever the plot needs it to do. Whenever the writer needs something to happen, it's just, oh, yeah, somehow the Force did it.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
That's why I like these other two graphs here for my books and movies. I like things to be logically consistent and understandable. I like for it to make sense. But, just like the soft magic system can be abused with laziness, a hard magic system can be overdone. Which honestly isn't the best word, but it's the only one I can think of. What I mean by that is something I see happen a lot, usually with new writers, but certainly not always, is that they're very eager to tell you all the fine, nitty-gritty details they've worked out with their magic system. What you end up with is pages of exposition and essentially just Wikipedia articles. I mean, I get it. You want to make sure the audience knows everything about the world and that you covered all your bases. I've done it. I still do it, and I still get scolded for it by the editors. All part of the process. But a really cool thing you can do with a good hard magic system is what Full Metal Alchemist did. They cemented very firmly the rule of equivalent exchange. In order to make something, you have to give something. It's repeated several times. It's the law of that world. Then you're thrown the rumor of the Philosopher's Stone, which is something that can break that rule. Man, you say what? That world you built just got completely flipped upside down, and not in a bad way. That was sudden plot convenience. If I remember right, for a fair portion of the show, most people didn't even consider the stone to be real, and that it was just a myth. I should also clarify here that there were two versions of this show, and I can't keep them straight. I did watch both, but the one I remember more clearly is the one that started off with the two main characters as kids back at their home and showing the entire accident. I think that one was just called Full Metal Alchemist, and then there was another run later called Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which told the story a slightly different way. Anime is complicated sometimes.
incredible valor, respectable muscles!
Complicated. And another random thought to throw at you, if I haven't already, is that you can make a hard magic system and present it as a soft magic system. You can make all the rules behind the scene and have everything laid out, but in the way you tell your story, you don't give your audience all the information. To the audience, it's a soft magic system. And on that note, I will add that I highly recommend that you, the author of these fine works, know how your system works regardless of how you're presenting it. You might not need to know the full formulas for everything, but you should have a fairly thorough understanding of its limitations and its capabilities. Had Star Wars defined the Force back in the 70s, we probably would have been better off. They still could have sold it as some spiritual, mystical energy that nobody is quite sure the limits of, and had they stuck to the original design of the Force, we probably would have figured out its limitations over the next 50 years of seemingly bottomless Star Wars content. But they didn't, and now we have this.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
You know, I pick on that one a lot, but really, the Force speed was arguably just as bad. So what else can you get from a soft magic system? I already said it's useful for a GM when it comes to TTRPGs, but what else does it have going for it? It can be easy. Not for you, the creator, but for the audience. And you know what? Sometimes people just want easy, and that's okay. You can have the main character stroll through town and step onto a platform, and as he does, a crystal embedded in the center of it starts to glow, and up the platform goes. You don't know how the elevator works, but you have a pretty solid idea that the crystal is somehow powering or controlling it in some way. That's pretty easy to digest and figure out. Your author notes may look something like,
This crystal was made by taking power from God and then carefully extracting it into another vessel that was forged by melting down some other material that's able to house the flow of divine energy, which allows it to be routed and controlled depending on the type of crystal that was used in the first place. You have to be careful because the crystal is extremely unstable, which is why this other material and process is used because that keeps it from overflowing.
You get the idea. One of those is a lot easier to digest than the other, and if your audience wants easily digestible world building, then a soft magic system might be the way to go. It doesn't guarantee an easier to understand world, but it can certainly help. And if there's anything useful to glean from this video, I think it's just to be consistent in what you make, no matter what it is. Inconsistency can ruin a lot of things in storytelling. Magic systems, characters, world building, you name it. Inconsistency will undo any good story. Anyway, you know what that means? It's shout out time. Today's shout out, and man, if I haven't done this one before, shame on me. And if I have done it already, well, shame on me for that too, I guess. I really can't win here. Adam, this man's taking good care of my squirrel friends. He's got some handsome ones too. Just look at these guys. This little guy right here is my favorite. So good job, Adam. Keep up the good work. And with that out of the way, you probably already know what the question's going to be. What is your preferred magic system? Are you a fan of hard magic or are you a fan of soft magic? And why? Explain yourself. Squirrel out!